Dear guests, the next event will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. ضيوفنا الأعزاء، ستبدأ الجلسة بعد 5 دقائق. يرجى أخذ مقاعدكم. Dear guests, the event is now in session. Thank you. ضيوفنا الأعزاء، ستبدأ الجلسة الآن. شكراً.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's conference on greening information management for sustainable development. Before we start the session, I would like to extend my thanks on behalf of the university to Expo City Dubai Pavilion, to the team, and to Her Excellency Rim Al Hashimi for her support. Dr. Proskovia will start the conference with her colleagues, Dr. Forget, Dr. Victor, and Dr. Mehlouli, all specialists on records management and archives. Dr. Proskovia, please, if you would like to join on stage.
Thank you so much, Manon. I would like to start by thanking the government of the UAE for hosting the COP28 and for thanking Sorbonne University for facilitating our engagement here and my colleagues. So my name is Proskovia Svad and I'm Associate Professor at the Department of History, teaching records management and archival science. And what we are presenting to you today are preliminary results of a pre-study that is focusing on greening information management for sustainable development. So these are preliminary results. That's a fact I would like to emphasize because we've just embarked on, collecting empirical data on each country. So this is a pre-study that is focusing on 3 countries, Sweden, Kenya, and Zimbabwe, and the UAE. And we are trying to find out whether they've implemented policies that govern the management of information in a sustainable way. So that's one of our objectives. The second objective is to examine awareness among public officers about the impact of information management on the environment. And the third one is to establish how the current developments of open data, we know that government processes are dependent on open data today, and the data houses, whether those are aligned with the ambition of sustainable development. And lastly, we aim to make recommendations on how green information management should be achieved. So in 1984, the Brundtland Commission re-examined the environment and development. And they coined the new concept, which is referred to as sustainable development. And it is defined as using the global resources responsibly in a way that will serve the current generation and leave some for the future generation. And sustainable development constitutes, therefore, 3 pillars. That's the social development, economic development, and the process, and the protection of the environment. So sustainable development is, of course, promoted to ensure responsible utilization of our global common resources. However, we feel as information scientists or people working in the field of records management and archival science that there isn't a lot of attention that is being paid to digital information management and its impact on the environment and therefore sustainable development. So we argue that governments need to embrace green information management through data stewardship strategies and policies to reduce social, ecological, and environmental challenges. Today's society is dependent on digital information. We all know we can't survive without digital information. But this information is also dependent on information systems. And yet, we know that information systems, of course, become obsolete. And so the factor of technology obsolescence is something that government government institutions or all organizations have to live with. They're often at time forced to embrace new technology, and this, as a result, creates e-waste, which both is destructive to the environment and to the people in different parts of the world, especially where recycling has not been advanced yet. So it's important to acknowledge that the increased use of information systems has constituted a growing environmental concern in itself through, for example, increased power consumption for running an IT system, or the need to use scarce resources to build new IT artifacts all the time. I think you hear quite often how we need to upgrade our systems, how we need to buy new IT gadgets, computers, and stuff like that. So the business of modern governments today, we know, especially since all governments are involved in what we call e-government development, they have an extensive estate of ICT, They use thousands of applications, and they have a great many user devices. And such a large ICT estate, we argue, can offer great potential to contribute to greening government information by reducing waste and improving efficiencies. So there isn't a lot of research that has been done on this particular subject. And the only study we can refer to, as quoted in the slide, is from 2010. And they do suggest some green information management options, like, for example, embracing enterprise content management, and thus having an overview of all your information, or deduplication. Now, there is an author of a book in the country where I come from, which is Sweden, who actually argued that most of the information that is contained in our government authorities are duplicates. So, in as much as we gather a lot of information, it's not automatically quality information. And so they also suggest manual pruning or weeding, or centralized data storage repositories. I think that give organizations a better overview, or tiered data storage systems, and that's the hierarchical categorization of data, so that you may prioritize which data to store in which format in order to make the information discoverable and easy to retrieve. Master data management, and resource reduction, limitation. So what are the negative impacts that come from ICT and digital information management? We have the energy consumption and the materials used in the production and distribution of ICT equipment. We have energy consumption in use directly for cooling servers, short product life cycles, and e-waste. We've talked about technology obsolescence. So it's familiar that e-waste management has been successfully deployed in Europe and America, while the majority of developing nations still lack effective e-waste management. This is what happens, after we've done away with the computers, outdated them. So the consequences of improper e-waste disposal in landfills or other non-dumping sites pose serious threats to current public health and can pollute ecosystems for generations to come. So when electronics are improperly disposed and end up in landfills, toxic chemicals are released, impacting the Earth's air, soil, water, and ultimately human health. Contamination in the air occurs when e-waste is informally disposed by dismantling, shredding, or melting the materials, releasing dust particles or toxins into the environment that cause pollution and respiratory health problems. So e-waste of little value is often burned, but the burning also serves as a way to get valuable metal from these electronics, like copper. And as a result of the burning, chronic diseases and cancers are at a higher risk to occur when burning e-waste, because it releases fine particles which can travel thousands of miles, creating numerous negative health risks to humans and animals. This is a well-known global dumping place, Agbo Globosh dumping place in Accra, Ghana. Such a complicated name. But this is what happens, you know, as the poor young people try to physically ban without recycling possibilities, effective recycling possibilities, to access the valuable metals in the electronics, the e-waste. So up to 10,000 workers wade through tons of discarded electronic goods as part of this enormous informal recycling process in what has become one of the world's largest destinations for used electronic goods. So burns, as a result of this burning, they have burns, back problems, and infected wounds. These are common ailments among these workers, as well as respiratory problems. Chronic nausea and debilitating headaches brought on by the hazardous working environment, of course, like you've seen, like you see there. I hope you realize that there were animals also feeding in that some filthy dumping informal recycling place. So I come from Sweden, like I said, and of course Sweden has worked with the sustainable development for a long time, and if there are any Swedes here, they will witness that we engage in meticulous sorting of garbage. It's somehow inculcated in us now. And so I was interested in knowing how the government institutions were working towards achieving green information management. So I looked at, these are preliminary results that I'm sharing with you, 10 research objects, which constituted 3 municipalities and 7 government agencies. I talked to categories of people that constituted sustainable development strategists, archivists, information architects, and registrars. So when we designed our interview guide, we had 3 themes. We focused on information governance. And what do we mean by this? This is a model that is used in organizations that have effective management of all their information resources. But it's a broader sub-theme of information management that constitutes IT, data governance, information security, data privacy, risk management, and what have you. So we also looked at information culture and sustainable information practices. Are the people who are creating this information aware of why they create it? What are the attitudes they have towards this information, and so on? We also looked at sustainable and green information management. Do they have any policies that govern how the disposal of old e-gadgets, old computers are recycled, and so on? And so these are the findings that I'm going to share with you today. There were only 2 out of 10 research entities that had an information governance model. And the rest of the entities had fragmented information government models. You know, they were working with the different aspects that I stipulated under information governance. Only 2 of them had investigated, the agencies I investigated and municipalities had an enterprise and information management, information architecture. These enterprise architecture is supposed to enable them to understand, to have an overview of the investments they made in making information systems, while information architecture gives them an overview of all the information resources. So all the entities claim to be managing their information resources according to the legal framework that governs government information. But there were, of course, challenges of open data and its long-term preservation. When it comes to information culture, the majority of the entities informed the top management prioritized the management of information, and employees were given training when new systems are implemented. The employees used all the systems in place to manage information. And when it came to sustainable development, employees are reminded to go through their information resources. I think this is one of the recommended options for greening information management in order to weed out superseded information. The municipalities and the agencies had long-term preservation plans and retention schedules. They controlled printing, the printing so that people don't just print out whatever information on paper. They were leasing and using the computers a little bit longer than it has been the tradition. So overall, the Swedish agencies and municipalities were generally working with sustainable development, but without a particular focus on green information management. So by this I mean that they were, for example, undertaking measures for sustainably disposing e-waste as part of the bigger sustainable development framework that the country is engaged in. So all the agencies and municipalities did not have an articulated strategy for green information management. And lastly, I hope that we shall be able to watch a video clip that sort of demonstrates what we are trying to argue for. Why should we care about the management of digital information? Because yes, it has an impact on the lives of people who are so far away from where these computers are being used. So I hope, can you
Recycling West Africa style. Consumer electronics smashed, sorted, and the valuable metals extracted. This is Agbogbloshie, Accra, where technology goes to die. Workers here are smelting, feeding fires with TV casings and fridge interiors, a heat fierce enough to burn the insulation off electrical cables. So what are you looking for when you're doing this?
When I'm doing this, I'm looking for copper.
A fingertip search through the ashes gleans scraps of metal that are then sold on. Take-home pay between €5 and €7. The men and boys working here, and they range between 13 and 35 years old. They're not from Accra, they come from the north of the country, and they came here on a sort of gold rush, promised riches from waste. But the riches turned out to be a pittance, and the gold turned out to be lead, cadmium, and other heavy metals lodged in their bodies and slowly poisoning them.
We have problems because if you didn't bath, or maybe if you bath finished, it will just be paining your body unless you get some medicine.
Hanan is just 17 years old, taking medicine to work in an environment so toxic that even some of the boys here refuse to touch the river running through the site.
And you could see the smoke also. The smoke is also traveling. At any place that it deposits these heavy metals or the people there can be contaminated. The soil itself, you could see is hugely contaminated just by your sight.
Time to leave Agbogbloshie and head with Vincent to Ghana's Atomic Energy Commission. The lab has performed a battery of tests on soil from the site. They found cadmium 30 times over acceptable levels. It can cause cancer, kidney failure, bone disease. Levels of lead, which attacks the nervous system, topped 100 times the recommended maximum dose. You wouldn't live here.
I would not advise anybody to live there. Meanwhile, this place has been classified as one of the most pollutant or contaminated sites in the world.
The processing at Agbogbloshie is fed by the illegal traffic of e-waste into Ghana. Today, used TVs from Australia and Spain are being loaded onto waiting trucks. There's nothing wrong with importing used tech if it works. If it doesn't, it's hazardous e-waste, and it shouldn't be here. So how many of these TVs actually work? And they all work?
Yeah,
they all function?
Yeah, 99% are working.
100%?
Yeah, about
99%? How big is 1%?
How big is 1%? Very, very small.
Ghana is working on legislation to prevent illegal e-waste imports, but it's taking time as legislators don't want to curb the legitimate trade in used tech.
We do have some of the equipment that functions when it is imported into the country. So what the drafters are seeking to do is to ensure that they don't end up preventing the valuable trade in used electric and electronic equipment.
In the meantime, young men and boys will continue to stoke the fires at Agbogbloshie and pay a heavy price with their health for a handful of change.
Okay, thank you so much. I would like to acknowledge the journalists' work that I've used to demonstrate the connection to what we are doing, with our environment. That is a BBC journalist, and that content is available on YouTube. I would now like to call upon my colleague, Assistant Professor Forget Shatarere, Department of History.
Thank you so much, Proscovia, for setting the scene. That was quite a heart-wrenching video we saw there, and I sincerely hope that the authorities that be will take up the appropriate actions to correct it. So in the same framework, okay. Wow. I have to call upon Victor because I think the presentation that's coming next is actually for him and not me. But that's not a problem because our presentation is within the same framework of greening information, and what we are doing is just presenting different case studies. So my case is on UAE and Victor is on Kenya, and I can see that his presentation is on the screen. So Victor, please.
So thank you so much. I am going to present Kenya's case study on green information management for sustainable development. So the objectives are the same. We are looking at strategies and policies that these countries have put in place to, as far as entrenching green information management is concerned. So the objectives, like mentioned before, we want to know whether there is an information governance framework in place. Then number two, we want to find out the information culture and the sustainable information practices that are being practiced in these government agencies. And lastly, we want to find out the green information practices that these institutions are practicing. So, just to start off, I think I would like to give an overview of the information management landscape in Kenya. So, management of records or information is governed by the Public Service Act, Public Service and Documentation Service Act, Chapter 19. The National Archives is the overseer of, in terms of management of records in the country. But then when we talk about management of digital information, we have the ICT Authority. This is the Information Communication and Technology Authority that oversees the deployment, management, and implementation of ICT services across government. So this ICT Authority has a network of ICT officers. These are public officers whose role is to facilitate the implementation of ICT standards within the various ministries and departments. Now, on the question of information governance framework, which was our first objective, so we want to find out whether the state of records management, content management, IT and data governance, information security in these government agencies. So my findings was that, yes, there is an information governance model or framework in place, and this framework included Electronic Records and Data Management Standard 2023, an IT Governance Standard also 2023, an Information Security Standard 2023, and a Digitization of Public Record Standard 2023. So you can see, as far as the information governance framework is concerned, these things are in place. We have all these standards in place. Now, on the question of culture and sustainable information practices within government agencies in Kenya, my findings were that the top management was concerned about how information is managed. For example, each ministry has a records management unit and a records management officer. Equally, each ministry has an ICT officer. Some ministries even had records management committees. Of course, in terms of green information management, there were no sustainable development officers, so to speak. Then there was also training that was offered by the National Archives, as well as to the records management officers, as well as training to the ICT officers that was offered by the ICT authority. Then there's also something else that I noted. The aspect of information, the aspect of optimal information systems has been institutionalized. So we have what we call the legal notice that establishes this ICT authority. And one of the provisions within this legal notice is that it says that the authority is required to facilitate optimal equipment use in the public service. Of course, this is very important as far as green information management is concerned, because we are talking about efficient use of electronic devices as well as reduce resource use or optimal use of available resources. So this is very much in line or consistent to the aspect of green information management. Then the ICT authority also has conducted training among ICT officers on implementation of information systems. Then there's a question of sustainable development practices, and the questions that we were asking ourselves here is, does the agency have an enterprise architecture? How does this architecture inform the acquisition of information systems? So my findings was that the authority is guided by a government enterprise architecture. So there's an architecture in place, and this architecture or framework guides the acquisition, deployment, management, and operation of ICTs across the public service. So it sort of standardizes the management and deployment of ICT standards and information systems across the public sector. So one of the issues that is mentioned in this architecture is that institutions are supposed to incorporate green standards within or to have green standards within their when they're acquiring systems. So green standards have been incorporated in the broader ICT standards to ensure green aspects are captured. Of course, this information I got from the director in charge of shared services, whom I interviewed. Then there's the question of, is there a policy that governs management of e-waste? We have this legal notice that establishes the ICT authority, which talks about the optimal use of equipment, which I already mentioned. Specifically, subsection 1 says that the authority should be guided by the principles of environmental protection. So already this institution has been mandated or has been required to observe aspects to do with environmental protection. Then there's also the directive for the ministries and other government agencies to surrender electronic equipment that they no longer use. Of course, this is as part of electronic waste management. We also have regulations on sustainable waste, e-waste, which are currently in Parliament being debated. So the authority has also developed an e-waste framework for the public sector, that is for the whole government. In September 2023, they reported that they had received over 11,000 devices from the various government agencies as part of conforming to the requirement to surrender these devices. So they intend to set up an ICT museum where they display some of these devices, especially those ones that are unique. At the lower government level, we have the Digital ICT Master Plan 2022 to 2032, which, among other things, provides for the formulation of county e-waste guidelines. So then, does the agency have recycling procedures? So this aspect has been mentioned in the ICT Master Plan. Of course, I've also talked about the issue of the guidelines requiring various government agencies. We also have a project where some of these electronic devices are distributed to needy schools that require them. Then what efforts have the government agencies made to protect green information? So we have the ICT Master Plan. We have the implementation of the paperless strategy, office strategy. We have the question of purchasing energy efficient electronic devices. We have establishment of green data centers in the country. We also have green digital infrastructure that is solar powered. So as part of, reducing greenhouse, emissions. Then we also have the aspect of training of public officers on issues to do with green information management. Then what actions does the agency use to reduce energy consumption? There's a question of green energy power plan in the various, in certain parts of the country. I've talked about the issue of data centers. So to conclude, I found out that the country has made significant strides in terms of formulation of policy. There's visible progress on e-waste management by the issuance of relevant guidelines to the relevant ministries. But we need, or there's still the question of implementation of these guidelines by the lower tier government. Then there's also pending approval of the regulation in Parliament. So what is the next phase? I intend to collect data from the lower tier government to establish, the e-waste strategies that they have in place, as well as other measures that they have put in place as far as green information management is concerned. This I will do in December. So thank you so much for listening, and I really appreciate. I would like to invite my colleague, Dr. Meluli, to come and present on. Okay, I should invite Forget. Okay. So yeah, it's Meluli who is supposed to come and present Zimbabwe's case study. Thank you so much.
Hello to you all. Okay, thank you to colleagues Praskovia and Victor, who has already set the stage there. Okay, my name is Metluli Masugu. As seen on the screen there, I'm going to present the case of Zimbabwe. By the way, we are all looking at the same study, Greening Information Management. So I'm going to share with you the case of Zimbabwe. That is what has the country done so far in terms of greening information management. So just to highlight the concept of green information management, where Ian was saying the green information management is considered as part of the green mantra. This is something that is ongoing. Everyone in their discipline perhaps is talking of greening whatever they are doing. So from the information management perspective, we are also joining that green mantra in terms of how information management can be greened. So it entails a combination of information management activities that ensure sustainable information management practices. Examples of this include creation, acquisition, storage, use, and transmission of information and information resources through environmentally friendly methods. So we're coming from an information management perspective. So we talk about greening information management practices from the perspective of acquisition, the perspective of storage of this information, which is one of the major activities in information science or information management. We acquire information to store it, to preserve it for longevity. So we need to see to it that we adopt green strategies to do this. So green information management ranges from sustainable development systems. It appeals to a number of practitioners in the chain of data and information, including archivists, records managers, librarians, data scientists, technologists who are here present, perhaps information system specialists, and many others. So we are a combination, we are a family of players in this chain of greening information management. So the rate of information generation is growing exponentially across the globe. This is a fact. So for instance, some stats there indicate that the amount of data created, captured, copied, or consumed globally is forecast to increase rapidly, reaching 64.2 zettabytes. By 2020, we've gone past this. There is a prediction, again, to the effect that over the next 5 years, up to 2025, the global data creation is projected to grow to more than 180 zettabytes. Organizations everywhere are looking to meet carbon peak and neutrality goals, and this starts with data centers. There is a lot of mention of these data centers because essentially we are dealing with information. All these gadgets, be it a laptop, a computer, a cell phone, a television set, etc., it's meant to convey information, it's meant to contain information, it's meant to relay information. So everything is to do with information at the end of the day. Now let's zero in on the case of Zimbabwe. What has the country done in terms of greening information management? Like we have said, this is an ongoing study. These are just preliminary findings. I will not repeat the objectives there. But in terms of information governance, which was our first objective, we can see that various standalone documents that serve as information management governance existed in the country. For instance, there are procedure manuals in place to ensure proper management of information resources. In one of the departments that I dealt with, that is the National Archives of Zimbabwe, which happens to be the major authority in terms of archives, records, and information management in the country. This department falls under the Ministry of Home Affairs and Cultural Heritage, which has come up with an enterprise risk management plan for the entire ministry. Then we asked the question again, does the agency have an enterprise architecture that is the blueprint for IT investments? Results indicate that government has reportedly standardized the acquisition of IT products or some IT equipment. The same was yet to be done with other software. The ICT policy of 2016 encourages the sharing of information infrastructure to reduce duplication and saving up to 40%. Then objective number 2 was to look at the information culture and sustainable information practices. Here we're interested in things like attitude, norms, etc., of employees in organizations. So key findings reflect that management ensured compliance with set standards in the management of information in this department. Staff was trained in information management. There was staff responsible for information management, and staff prioritized information management. Objective number 3, sustainable development and sustainable information management. Paper was being disposed of in environmentally friendly methods, but there was no policy on e-waste management as yet. Disposal of old computers, keyboards, etc. was in accordance with the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Assets Act. The promotion of green information management was not yet in existence, though. The department is yet to go digital there are plans to roll out an electronic document records management system. Now, these are preliminary findings of the institution that I managed to deal with. I'm yet to receive permission and deal with other government departments. So these are just preliminary findings from that institution. But I looked at literature to say, what does literature say so far in terms of greening information management practices? So I realized that Zimbabwe has established a national data center and embarked on a number of e-government programs. These e-government programs are particularly going to help in terms of reducing the production of paper, which we know is the chief culprit in terms of environmental issues. So the National Data Center is serving the whole of the country. It was established in 2021. The National Data Center is expected to operate under the purview of the Ministry of ICT. The government is currently sponsoring a number of e-government projects that are meant to eliminate or reduce the use of paper, because that is the chief culprit. Cabinet Secretary Document Management System, e-filing. The Zimbabwe Investment Authority has gone online. The Deeds Company, intellectual property company, has also gone online, and a number of those other systems. We also have the Integrated Electronic Case Management System, which is a legal system in the country wherein we no longer print, wherein we no longer deal with paper. All the cases are being handled online. Then we're saying, upon being connected to the National Data Center, all these projects and many others can significantly optimize the handling of information or records generated through e-government. For instance, reduce or completely eliminate paper. So all government and state universities, for instance, in the country have implemented their own data centers. In other words, every university has its own data center where it is doing activities that ordinarily would result in the printing of paper, but all that is now being done electronically. For instance, the processing of results, requests for information, and many other activities. All these are now happening online or electronically. We also have e-waste recycling by one of the major electronic service providers, that is Liquid, in conjunction with a UAE-based company to recycle waste, that is e-waste. You can get more details if you follow that link about how this e-waste is being disposed of. However, we still have a few challenges. One of them being the weak digital records management policies in the public sector, because we acknowledge the fact that going digital is the first step towards the elimination of paper or being smart in terms of our operations. However, if we are still largely printing, it means that we are yet to face the problem. So we have that challenge. Reliance on paper systems by government departments. For instance, it emerged that some governments are still printing and filing as their storage and preservation methods. We also have some legal ambiguities regarding custodial issues around digitized content. Lack of e-waste management laws. For instance, we may learn that we still don't have a law on e-waste, despite the country having a lot of e-gadgets, importing these gadgets en masse. We still don't have a law to govern e-waste in the country. Okay, so this marks the end of my presentation. I would like to call upon my colleague, Professor Chaterera Zambuko, to the stage. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Masuku. I have to adjust the mic. Where is my presentation gone? So yes, in the same framework, I am going to present the efforts that the UAE has done to promote the sustainable management of information. Okay. So I will not get into the literature. I will not give you an overview of what greening information is, because I believe my colleagues have done justice to that aspect. So I will go straight into what the UAE has done and is doing in promoting the sustainable management of information. So the UAE has been actively supporting the sustainable management of information through various initiatives and projects that focus on digital transformation and sustainability. Some of the key factors and efforts include the UAE Vision 2021, the solar-powered data centers, the UAE Digital Government Strategy 2025, the e-waste recycling, and the active participation in international initiatives aimed at promoting a safe and inclusive digital environment. I don't know if IT can help me, my presentation to show on the screen in front of me so that I don't have to give the audience my back. Oh, it won't come? No, that's okay. I will go with that. So I'll talk about the UAE Vision 2021. This initiative includes several sustainability goals, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing the share of clean energy in the country's energy mix. So UAE's Vision 2021 promotes sustainable information management by focusing on reducing carbon emissions as part of its broader sustainable development goals. The vision sets clear a roadmap for a diversified and sustainable economy with goals to reduce carbon emissions, increase renewable energy adoption, and improve waste management practices. One of the significant achievements in line with Vision 2021 is Dubai's reduction of carbon emissions by 21% in 2021. So this reduction is part of a Dubai carbon abatement strategy. The Dubai Carbon Abatement Strategy 2030 aims to reduce 30% of carbon emissions in the Emirate by the end of 2030, and it aligns with the UAE's efforts to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The UAE has pledged to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2050, like I said. So the country's Vision 2021 sets ambitious goals for the nation to become a better leader in clean technology and environmental technologies, focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Dubai is home to the world's largest solar-powered data center, located in the Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum Solar Park. This facility supports the goals of the Dubai Clean Energy Strategy 2050 and the Dubai Net Zero Emission Strategy 2050. The UAE is working towards achieving net zero, like I said, and this strategy aims to increase the share of clean energy in the country's energy mix and reduce the carbon footprint of power generation by 70%. So solar power can help data centers to achieve energy independence and reduce their reliance on traditional energy sources, which often have a higher environmental impact. And with proper design and backup systems, solar-powered data centers can ensure a reliable power supply, incorporating energy storage solutions to maintain operations during periods of low sunlight. So by adopting solar energy solutions, institutions can demonstrate their commitment to sustainability and attract customers and investors who value environmentally responsible practices. So overall, The solar-powered data centers play a crucial role in promoting sustainable management of information by reducing carbon emissions, improving energy efficiency, and demonstrating a commitment to environmental responsibility. Because as the demand for sustainable solutions increases, the integration of solar power in data centers is expected to become more widespread, paving the way for a more environmentally friendly and energy efficient digital era. The UAE has been at the forefront of digital innovation, with Abu Dhabi and Dubai leading the way in implementing digital transformation strategies, such as the Dubai Plan 2021 and the UAE Digital Government Strategy 2025, which outlines a comprehensive roadmap for digital transformation and efficiency enhancement. These strategies, they aim to provide fast internet connections, secure digital infrastructure, and promote cross-sectoral and interministerial coordination and collaboration. And the UAE has several e-waste recycling facilities, such as the EnviroServe, which is in partnership with my home country, Zimbabwe, which Dr. Mehluli made reference to in his presentation earlier on. There's also Greenland Recycling, which provide integrated e-waste solutions and help to reduce the electronic work. So I'll talk more about EnviroServe because it's a company that's servicing here and also prominent in Zimbabwe, which is part of the case study. EnviroServe is a leading e-waste management company in the UAE, specializing in e-waste recycling and IT asset disposition services. One of EnviroServe's key contributions to sustainable information management is its R2 compliant e-waste processing facility. So R2 stands for sustainable recycling. And it provides clear standards for recyclers to use when they recycle electronics. EnviroServe helps manage electronic waste in an environmentally responsible manner, ensuring that hazardous materials are properly disposed of and valuable resources are recovered. So EnviroServe has partnered with other companies to promote sustainable practices. For example, they have collaborated with Xerox Emirates for over 10 years on a toner and cartridge recycling program. And in addition to these initiatives, EnviroServe also offers comprehensive IT solutions which help businesses manage their IT assets in an environmentally responsible way. Talk of international initiatives. The UAE actively participates in international initiatives aimed at promoting digital transformation and ensuring an inclusive digital environment, such as the United Nations Global Compact and the World Summit on the Information Society, and COP28, of course. By actively engaging in these initiatives, the UAE demonstrates its commitment to supporting digital life, not only within its borders, but also on a global scale. And of course, I cannot end my talk without talking about COP28 in detail, because COP28 is playing a huge role in the sustainable management of information. This convention, it contributes to the sustainable management of information in that it is committed to complying with the ISO 20121 standard, which is an international standard for sustainable event management. This standard requires the organization to consider all key management aspects and impacts of its event on the environment, society, and economy. The compliance with this standard ensures that the information generated and managed during the event is done so in a sustainable manner. Secondly, COP28 is using advanced technologies to put sustainable information management. For instance, Google Cloud is bringing AI and cloud technologies to support organizations in measuring, optimizing, and reinventing their businesses for a low-carbon economy. So this includes improving access to climate data and building climate technology. And again, COP28 is also focusing on the role of digital technology in climate action. So digital technologies can help in the collection, analysis, and dissemination of climate-related information in a more efficient and sustainable manner. Last but not least, COP28, I have to make reference to COP28 because I'm looking at the UAE case and the efforts it's doing in promoting sustainable management of information. So COP28 is committed to sharing its sustainability policies and practices as part of its sustainability event management system. This includes sharing lessons learned from hosting a carbon neutral and ISO 20121 compliant event with other events in the UAE and beyond. So this commitment to sharing information contributes to the sustainable management of information by promoting best practices. Yes, from the presentation that I've done, which is based on a preliminary study mostly from extant literature, it is clear that the UAE has made significant strides towards sustainable information management through various strategies, policies, and partnerships. What came out strongly in my presentation was the UAE Vision 2021, the UAE Digital Abatement Strategy, Government Strategy 2025, and of course the UAE Green Agenda 2015 to 2030, which align with the Paris Agreement and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I am to collect empirical field evidence from some of the companies I've mentioned in my presentation in this month of December as we take on our winter break. And I hope to disseminate complete results on the full efforts that the UAE is doing in promoting the sustainable management of information. And as academics, we usually disseminate such information in outlets like journals and books that are peer-reviewed. I sincerely thank you for being here and for listening to us. Thank you so much, the organizers. Thank you, everyone.